Welcome back to the channel Rare Coins History, that brings history, mystery, and money together, one coin at a time. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because today's video might just change the way you look at that little copper coin rattling around in your drawer. We're diving deep into a small but mighty piece of American coinage, the 1975 Lincoln penny. At first glance, it might look like just another old cent. I mean, how special can a penny from 1975 be, right? But what if I told you this unassuming coin could be worth thousands, and I mean thousands, of dollars? And no, we're not talking about some ancient colonial coin dug up from the 1700s. This is a modern penny, one you or your parents might have used to buy bubble gum or pay the meter. So grab your coin jar, sit tight, and stick around, because the end of this video just might surprise you. Let's rewind to the mid-1970s. Gerald Ford was president, the Vietnam War had just come to a close, and American culture was shifting rapidly. Disco was on the rise, bell-bottoms were in style, and the economy was doing a bit of a roller coaster ride. In the middle of all that change, the U.S. Mint continued producing the Lincoln cent, something they'd been doing since 1909. But what makes the 1975 Lincoln penny stand out? On the surface, this penny looks pretty standard. It features Abraham Lincoln's iconic profile on the front, designed by Victor David Brenner, a design that had already been in use for over 6 decades by then. The reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to mark Lincoln's 150th birthday. And there's no mint mark if it was made in Philadelphia, or a little D or S below the date if it came out of Denver or San Francisco. So far, nothing too flashy, but as collectors know, it's not always about what's on the surface. The real magic is in the details, and the rarity. Most 1975 pennies are made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, weighing in at just over 3 grams. Over 5 billion were minted that year across all locations, which makes it seem like there's nothing rare or valuable about them at all. But the key lies not just in the date, but in the condition, the specific mint it came from, and any tiny, unexpected details that might have happened during the minting process. Now here's where it gets interesting. While billions were produced, the vast majority of these coins went straight into circulation. That means they were used for decades, dropped in piggy banks, jammed into vending machines, or left to darken at the bottom of pockets. Very few were pulled from the mint rolls and preserved in pristine, untouched condition. And fewer still were struck with errors, those little mistakes that happen when something goes wrong at the U.S. Mint. Maybe a coin was struck slightly off-center. Maybe there was a double die, a mistake where the design gets stamped twice, leaving a ghost-like image around the letters or Lincoln's profile. Or maybe the penny was struck on the wrong kind of planchet altogether. These are the rare gems that collectors go wild for. And when it comes to the 1975 Lincoln penny, some of these rarities have shown up in auction houses, and they've made serious waves. Imagine stumbling across a 1975 penny with a sharp, full strike, rich red luster, and no signs of handling or wear. Maybe it's got a dramatic double die on the obverse, or a surprising off-metal strike. To the average person, it's just a penny. But to a collector? That's a prize. That's a 1 in a million coin. And when coins like that come up at auction, the bidding wars get intense. You might be wondering, how much can a coin like that actually go for? Well, let's put it this way. If you've got a 1975 Lincoln penny that's in truly uncirculated condition, perfectly preserved since the day it was minted, or even better, if it has a rare mint error or was struck on the wrong metal, then you're not just holding on to history. You're holding on to something a lot more valuable than 1 cent, and here it comes, the jaw-dropping part of the story. There's a known case of a 1975 Lincoln penny that went up for auction in flawless, uncirculated condition, with an incredibly rare minting error. It didn't just sell for a couple $100. Not even a few thousand. This little copper coin was sold for a staggering $42,000. That's right. $42,000. For a penny. So next time you go through your old coin jar, or you're helping your grandparents clean out the attic, don't overlook the small stuff. That 1975 penny might not seem like much, but under the right conditions, it could be a treasure hiding in plain sight. Today, we're talking about a coin that millions of people have handled, tossed into fountains, dropped between car seats, or simply forgotten in old jars, the 1966 Lincoln penny. Now, you might be thinking, it's just a penny, what's the big deal? But what if I told you that one very special version of this coin, this humble, copper-colored 1-cent piece, has stunned collectors and turned heads in the numismatic world? Because hidden among the billions of these coins are rare varieties so valuable, they've gone for tens of thousands of dollars at auction. That's right. Not a joke, not an exaggeration. So, grab a seat, maybe dig out that old coin stash you haven't looked through in years, and stay with me to the end, because you just might be holding onto a coin that could change your life. Let's go back to 1966. It was a year of transition and tension in the United States. The country was deep in the Vietnam War, the civil rights movement was pushing forward, and pop culture was exploding with color and sound. Meanwhile, in the quieter world of coin production, something else was happening, something that would make the 1966 Lincoln penny more than just spare change. Now, if you're familiar with U.S. coinage, you probably know that mint marks are used to show where a coin was made. D for Denver, S for San Francisco, and if there's no letter, it usually means the coin was minted in Philadelphia. But in 1965, 1966, and 1967, the U.S. Mint made a bold move. They removed mint marks from all coins. Why? To reduce coin collecting during a national coin shortage. That's right, the U.S. Mint thought coin collecting was actually causing problems for the economy. So during these 3 years, including 1966, all Lincoln pennies came without mint marks, no matter where they were produced. That means, even though billions were made, you can't easily tell if your penny was minted in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. But that decision, removing mint marks, actually helped create a perfect storm for coin rarities. Because fewer people were collecting coins at the time, fewer were saved in pristine condition. Most were spent, used, abused, and lost. Today, that makes finding a high-quality 1966 penny a lot harder than you might think. So what should you be looking for? First off, condition is key. A shiny, uncirculated 1966 penny with its original red luster, sharp details, and no scratches or wear can already catch a collector's eye. But if you really want to hit the jackpot, you'll want to look for something even rarer, error coins. Yes, the magic word in coin collecting, errors. You see, despite their precision, the U.S. Mint isn't perfect. Sometimes, coins are struck off-center. Sometimes, they have doubling in the letters or numbers, called a double die. Other times, the planchet, the blank piece of metal a coin is stamped onto, is the wrong size or even the wrong material. These mistakes, though rare, can turn an ordinary coin into a one-of-a-kind treasure. For 1966 pennies, some of the most valuable examples have shown signs of strong doubling on the date or on the word liberty. Others have been struck slightly off-center, or even on dime planchets, meaning they're smaller, thinner, and lighter than normal. These are the coins that get collectors excited. These are the coins that break records at auction. Now, let's talk about what makes a coin truly valuable. It's not just rarity. It's not just condition. It's the perfect mix of both. A rare error coin that's been beat up and bent isn't worth much. But a rare error coin that's been perfectly preserved, maybe tucked away for decades in a coin album or mint set? That's where the money is, and it's not just collectors looking for these anymore. Investors, hobbyists, and even curious everyday people are joining the hunt, because stories keep popping up of people discovering rare coins in pocket change or inside old coffee tins that belonged to a grandparent. It's the thrill of the search, the history in your hand, and the idea that something so small could be worth so much. So what does all this mean for the 1966 Lincoln penny? Well, if you have one lying around, it might just be worth a penny. But if you happen to have the right one, an uncirculated example, possibly with a rare minting error, preserved in near-perfect condition, then you're in for a surprise, because one such coin, yes, a single 1966 Lincoln penny, was once sold for a jaw-dropping amount. Not because it was made of gold. Not because it was ancient. But because it was rare, it was flawless, and it told a story that collectors couldn't resist. That little copper coin ended up being worth $48,000, yes. 48,000. For 1 cent. So take another look at your old change. That beat-up penny from decades ago might just be hiding a treasure. And if you're lucky enough to spot the right one, you could be looking at more than just a coin, you could be looking at a life-changing discovery. Today, we're going to talk about a coin that just might be hiding in your couch cushions, your old piggy bank, or even in that little Ziploc bag of pennies you've been meaning to roll up and take to the bank. We're talking about the United States 1 cent coin, better known as the Lincoln penny, from the year 1981. At first glance, it might seem like just another common coin. After all, there are millions of pennies floating around out there. But the 1981 Lincoln penny has a few secrets of its own, and if you know what to look for, you might just find one that's worth way more than a single cent. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll learn why this seemingly ordinary penny could turn out to be one of the most valuable coins in your entire collection. Let's rewind to the early 1980s. Ronald Reagan was just about to take office, MTV hadn't hit the airwaves yet, and the personal computer was still a futuristic dream for most households. In the world of US coinage, though, 1981 was actually a very important year, because it was the final full year that Lincoln pennies were made primarily out of copper. That's right. Up until 1982, US 1 cent coins were made from an alloy of 95% copper and 5% zinc. But as copper prices began to climb, the US Mint faced a tough decision: continue minting expensive copper coins, or find a cheaper alternative. In 1982, the composition of the penny officially changed to a copper-plated zinc version, just 2.5% copper, with the rest being zinc. Lighter, cheaper, and not quite the same, but in 1981, the classic copper Lincoln penny was still alive and well, and that alone already makes it more interesting than the pennies we use today. But what really gets collectors excited are the specific varieties and rare errors that came out that year. You see, 1981 wasn't just any year. It was a transitional time at the US Mint. That year, the Mint was producing coins at 3 major locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. You can identify these by the tiny letters stamped just below the date. P for Philadelphia was not used on pennies, so if there's no letter, it was made there. D is for Denver, and S indicates San Francisco. Now, here's where things start to get really interesting. The 1981 Lincoln penny came in 2 major varieties when it comes to the proof coins: Type 1 and Type 2. These were specially made for collectors, and while the differences between the two are small to the untrained eye, they make a huge difference in the world of coin collecting. The key difference lies in the clarity and style of the S mint mark. Type 1 has a blob-like S, while Type 2 features a clearer, more defined S. Type 2 proofs are much rarer and are worth significantly more, but that's not the only thing that can raise the value of a 1981 penny. There are also incredibly rare error coins from this year that fetch unbelievable prices. Imagine this: a penny that was struck off-center, or one that was double-stamped, where you can see 2 outlines of Lincoln's profile or doubling in the words, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty." These are known as double-die errors, and they are the holy grail for many coin collectors. And then there are the transitional errors. Remember how the Mint switched the metal composition in 1982? Well, some 1981 pennies may have been struck on experimental or leftover planchets intended for testing or made with the wrong composition entirely. These are incredibly rare, but they do exist, and collectors will pay big money to get their hands on one. But here's the thing. Even if your 1981 penny doesn't have an error or a rare proof variation, if it has been kept in pristine, untouched condition since the day it was minted, it could still hold surprising value. We're talking about what collectors call MS, or mint state grades, coins that were never circulated and remain as fresh and flawless as the day they were struck. A coin graded MS 67 or higher is extremely hard to find for 1981 Lincoln cents, especially in the copper composition. So now you might be thinking, what does all this mean for you? Well, it means that the next time you come across a 1981 penny, don't just toss it aside. Look at it closely. Check the mint mark. Look for signs of doubling, off-center strikes, or unusual weight. If it seems too perfect, too shiny, or just a little bit off, get it checked by a professional. Because if you happen to have the right combination of rarity, condition, and uniqueness, you could be holding something truly special, and now, the moment you've been waiting for. How much could the right 1981 penny be worth? Well, not every penny from 1981 is valuable. Most are worth exactly 1 cent. But for the rare few that were preserved in top condition, struck with precision, or contain a unique error, collectors have gone to great lengths to add them to their collections. In fact, one such penny, struck perfectly, with a rare minting anomaly, and kept in flawless condition, was once sold at auction for a breathtaking amount. That tiny copper coin sold for $40,000, yes, you heard that right, $40,000. For a single 1981 Lincoln penny. So before you write off your spare change as pocket filler, give those coins a second look. That penny sitting in a drawer or jammed in the bottom of your car's cup holder might just be worth far more than you ever imagined. Today's episode is all about a coin that many people overlook, something so ordinary that you might have dozens of them lying around your house, stuffed in a coin jar or sitting at the bottom of your drawer. We're talking about the one and only Lincoln penny from the year 1970. Now, you might be wondering, what could possibly be special about a penny from the 70s? After all, millions were made, right? How could something so common hold any real value? Well, let me tell you, this coin may be small in size, but it's packed with history, hidden variety, and in some cases, a whole lot of money. By the time we're done here, you'll never look at a 1970 penny the same way again. Let's take a journey back to 1970. Richard Nixon was president, the Vietnam War was still raging, and America was in the middle of a cultural transformation. It was a time of protest, music, and moon landings. Meanwhile, at the U.S. Mint, the Lincoln penny was still being produced by the billions, but something happened that year that would set certain 1970 pennies apart from the rest forever. The design of the Lincoln cent hadn't changed much since it first came out in 1909. You still had Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse, designed by Victor David Brenner, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a change made back in 1959 to mark Lincoln's 150th birthday. But as familiar as the design was, 1970 introduced some unique twists, and those twists are exactly why this little coin is so fascinating today. First, let's talk about mint marks. In 1970, Lincoln cents were minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The mint mark, if present, appears just below the date on the front of the coin. Philadelphia didn't use a mint mark, Denver used a D, and San Francisco used an S. Now, here's where it starts to get really interesting. Among all the pennies minted that year, there's one variety that collectors consider the holy grail, the 1970 small date Lincoln cent. Yes, that's right, small date. You see, the San Francisco Mint accidentally produced two different versions of the 1970 penny, one with a large date, and one with a small date. And to the untrained eye, they might look the same. But to a collector? The difference means everything. In the small date version, the number 7 in the date appears level with the other digits, and the word Liberty tends to look weaker and less defined. In the large date, the 7 dips lower than the other numbers, and the letters in Liberty are bolder and sharper. It's a subtle difference, but once you know what to look for, it's hard to miss. The small date is much rarer. Combine that with a coin in pristine, uncirculated condition, and you've got a potential treasure in your hands. But we're not done yet. There's another twist in the 1970 penny story. Some 1970 small date pennies also feature a double die error. That means the coin was struck twice with a slight misalignment, causing a ghostly doubling effect on the date, the word Liberty, or even, In God We Trust. These doubling errors are incredibly rare, and incredibly valuable. So imagine this, you find a 1970 Lincoln penny. You realize it's the small date variety. Then you look closer, and you notice the doubling on the date. Suddenly, this isn't just a lucky find, it's a jackpot. Even 1970 pennies from the Denver Mint can hold value if they're in mint state, but it's those San Francisco small date errors that have collectors on high alert. And the only way to know if you've got a winner? Pull out a magnifying glass, examine your coins carefully, and check every detail. Now let's talk about condition. Coin collectors use a grading scale from 1 to 70 to determine the quality of a coin. A grade of MS 60 means the coin is in mint state, never circulated, with minimal marks. But the real money comes in when a coin hits MS 65 or higher. That's a nearly perfect coin. No scratches, no wear, flawless luster. The kind of coin that looks like it just came off the press. If you happen to find a 1970 penny, especially a small date from San Francisco, in this kind of condition, your next step should be to get it graded by a professional service like PCGS or NGC. Because once it's authenticated and graded, its value could skyrocket. You see, collectors aren't just paying for a coin, they're paying for a story. The story of an accidental variety, of historical context, of something rare that shouldn't exist but does. And when all those elements line up in a single penny, what you're holding isn't just change, it's a collectible, a relic, a piece of American minting history. So, how much can one of these special 1970 Lincoln pennies actually be worth? Well, most are worth face value. Some might get you a few bucks. But the rare ones, the small date errors, the double dies, the high-grade uncirculated examples, they've turned pocket change into serious money. And one of these rare, perfectly preserved 1970s small date pennies with a stunning mint error was sold at auction for an incredible sum. That tiny copper coin was sold for $39,000. Yes, you heard that right. $39,000. For one penny. So the next time you find yourself going through an old pile of coins, take your time. Look closely. You never know what kind of treasure might be hiding right under your nose. Today. Because we're diving deep into one of the most interesting and confusing pennies ever made by the U.S. Mint, the 1982 Lincoln cent. At first glance, a 1982 penny might not look like anything special. It's that same familiar face of Abraham Lincoln on the front, and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. The design hadn't changed in decades. So why does this particular year get so much attention from coin collectors? Well, 1982 wasn't just another year for the Lincoln penny. It was a turning point. A moment of change. A year where something big happened behind the scenes, something that still has collectors buzzing, hunting, and searching through rolls of pennies to this very day. Let's set the stage. Before 1982, for over 2 decades, the Lincoln cent was made of a durable copper alloy, 95% copper and 5% zinc. These pennies had some real weight to them, and if you held a few in your hand, you could feel the difference. But in 1982, something changed. Due to rising copper prices, the U.S. Mint made a major decision. Midway through the year, they changed the composition of the penny to something cheaper and lighter, copper-plated zinc. It was still reddish in color, still had that familiar design, but it was no longer the same coin underneath. And here's where things get interesting, because this change didn't happen all at once. The year 1982 ended up with 7 different variations of the Lincoln penny. That's right, 7. Some were made with the old copper composition. Others were made with the new zinc core. Some had large dates. Others had small dates. And they were minted in both Philadelphia and Denver. That means collectors have been on a mission ever since to sort through all the 1982 pennies and identify each type. So what makes this so exciting? Well, identifying the different types isn't always easy. The visual difference between a large date and a small date is subtle. You have to look closely, especially at the shape and position of the numbers, like how the 2 curls and where the 8 sits, and then there's the question of the metal. To know whether your penny is made of copper or zinc, you'll need a scale. A copper penny weighs about 3.11 grams, while the lighter zinc penny weighs around 2.5 grams. That tiny difference in weight can make a huge difference in value, but it doesn't stop there, because in all the chaos of switching metals and punching out billions of coins, a few rare mistakes slip through. And these mistakes are where the real treasure lies. In particular, collectors have been obsessed with finding something that, officially, shouldn't even exist, a 1982 D small date penny struck in copper. According to the Mint's records, number 1982 Denver small date pennies were supposed to be made using the old copper planchets. But somehow, a very small number of them were. How many? No one knows for sure, but it's only a handful. These are genuine, verified, and incredibly rare. So imagine this: you're sorting through your pennies. You find a 1982 D small date. You toss it on a scale. It reads 3.11 grams. Your heart skips a beat. That's copper. And if it's real, if it's authentic, you could be looking at one of the rarest modern pennies ever discovered. These rare coins are like the holy grail of modern US coin collecting. They combine everything collectors dream about: rarity, historical significance, and mystery. But it's not just the 1982 D copper small date that can be valuable. Even the more common types, if found in flawless, uncirculated condition, can fetch a solid price. Coins graded MS-65 or higher are already worth more than face value, and if you're lucky enough to find a perfect example with brilliant luster, sharp detail, and no signs of wear, it can be worth even more. Of course, condition is everything in the world of coins. A well-worn penny might be interesting, but a pristine, untouched coin straight from a mint set or forgotten collection? That's what serious collectors want, and if your 1982 penny happens to be one of those ultra-rare transitional errors, one of the few struck with the wrong metal, or featuring an unusual die variety, then you're not just holding a coin. You're holding a piece of minting history. So what's the bottom line? It's easy to overlook a penny. Most people wouldn't give a second thought to a coin that's been around for decades. But 1982 was no ordinary year. It was a turning point. A year of transition. A year that produced more than just coins. It produced mysteries, varieties, and opportunities, and for one lucky collector, a rare 1982 D small date copper penny, in near perfect condition, ended up being worth far more than they ever expected. That 1-cent coin was sold for $36,000, yes, $36,000. For a penny. So next time you're going through your change, don't ignore the humble Lincoln cent, especially the ones from 1982. Because you never know what you might be holding. It could be history. It could be rare. It could even be the find of a lifetime. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating story of a coin so ordinary looking, you've probably walked past it 100 times. It's small, it's copper-colored, and it's one of the most recognizable coins in America, the Lincoln cent. But we're not just talking about any Lincoln penny today. We're zooming in on the year 1972, a year that quietly produced one of the most exciting modern pennies in US history. So grab a magnifying glass and settle in, because the 1972 Lincoln cent is way more than just spare change. It might just be hiding in your collection, and if it is, you'll definitely want to hear this story all the way to the end. Now, let's rewind time to 1972. The United States was in the middle of change and conflict. The Vietnam War was raging. Richard Nixon was running for re-election. Gasoline was cheap, bell-bottoms were in, and people were just starting to get used to color TV. But while all of that was happening, something unusual was going on at the Philadelphia Mint, a mistake, to be exact. A tiny error that would turn an ordinary penny into a collector's dream. Most 1972 pennies were nothing special. Billions were produced that year, literally billions, with no mint mark, since they were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which didn't put a mint mark on its cents at the time. These pennies looked just like the ones that came before and after them, Lincoln's bust on the front, and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, but somewhere along the production line, something unusual happened. A small batch of 1972 pennies came out with a mistake so subtle, most people wouldn't even notice it at first glance. But for coin experts and collectors, it was the kind of mistake that changes everything. We're talking about one of the most famous and desirable minting errors in US coinage history, the 1972 double die obverse Lincoln cent. So, what exactly is a double die? To put it simply, it's a type of error that happens during the minting process when the die, the engraved stamp used to imprint the coin, shifts slightly and creates a second, overlapping image. When this happens, certain elements of the design appear to have been printed twice. Not just a little blurry. Not just slightly off. But a full, bold, ghost-like doubling that's clearly visible to the naked eye, and that's exactly what happened in 1972. A small number of pennies were struck with this powerful double die, making the date, the word liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust," appear doubled, like a shadow echoing just behind the main lettering. It's dramatic, it's obvious, and it's something you definitely don't see every day, but here's the kicker: most people didn't notice it at the time. These error pennies were released into circulation just like any other. They ended up in pockets, change jars, cash registers, you name it. And many were spent, lost, or worn down before anyone realized how rare they really were. Today, coin collectors are constantly on the lookout for the 1972 double-die Lincoln cent. It's become one of the most talked about error coins in American numismatic history. And for good reason: it's striking, it's rare, and it carries a story of mystery, oversight, and the thrill of discovery. But not all 1972 double-die pennies are the same. There are several varieties of doubling from that year, labeled by collectors as double-die obverse number 1, #2, #3, and so on. But it's the double-die obverse number 1, often referred to simply as the strong doubling, that gets all the attention. It's the one with the boldest and most dramatic doubling, and it's the one that fetches the highest prices in the coin world. So, how do you know if you've got one? Start with a magnifying glass, or even better, a jeweler's loupe. Look closely at the date. If the numbers, especially the 9 and 2, look like they've been printed twice, that's a good sign. Then check Liberty, you'll see strong doubling, especially on the B and the D. If In God We Trust looks like it has a shadow behind it, congratulations, you might be holding something rare. But even if you spot doubling, it's important to be sure. That's where professional grading services come in. Experts at places like PCGS and NGC can confirm whether what you have is the real deal and assign it a grade based on its condition, and condition? It matters a lot. A 1972 double-die penny in circulated condition might be worth a few $100s, maybe even $1,000 depending on how visible the error is. But if it's in mint state, meaning it was never used, shows no wear, and still shines with its original luster, it could be worth much, much more. And this is where it gets really exciting, because every now and then, a collector stumbles upon a 1972 double-die penny in near-perfect condition. Maybe it was tucked away in a roll of uncirculated coins. Maybe it was forgotten in a drawer for decades. But when it's finally discovered and sent off to be graded, the results can be jaw-dropping. So, how much can the rarest, most pristine example of a 1972 double-die penny be worth? Well, let's just say it's not just pocket change. It's not even just a few $100s. In fact, one such 1972 double-die Lincoln cent, flawless, uncirculated, and certified by a top grading service, was once sold for a life-changing amount. That single penny sold for $43,000, yes. $43,000. For a coin that someone once carried around in their pocket. A coin that could have been used to buy gum or dropped into a vending machine. Instead, it became a collector's treasure and a piece of American minting history. So the next time you come across a 1972 penny, don't just pass it by. Take a closer look. Because that little copper coin might be far more valuable than you ever imagined. Today, we're talking about one of those coins. A coin that was made during America's bicentennial spirit, in a year filled with parades, patriotism, and celebration. It's none other than the 1976 Lincoln penny. And believe it or not, this quiet little cent has a story that most people have never heard, one that could lead you to a coin worth tens of thousands of dollars. Let's take a trip back to 1976. The United States was celebrating its 200th birthday. The bicentennial. Red, white, and blue were everywhere. Fireworks, commemorative stamps, and even special coins were released. Quarters, half-dollars, and dollar coins had new designs just for that historic year. But here's something interesting: the Lincoln cent didn't get a redesign. It stayed the same. Honest Abe on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Just like always, but just because the design didn't change doesn't mean the 1976 penny isn't special. In fact, that's where the mystery begins. Millions and millions of Lincoln cents were minted in 1976, at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The ones from Philadelphia didn't carry a mint mark, while Denver coins had a small D under the date, and San Francisco coins, usually proofs for collectors, had an S. At first glance, the 1976 Lincoln cent looks like any other penny from the 1970s. But it's what's beneath the surface, literally and figuratively, that makes some of these coins incredibly special, because in that massive production run, a few strange things happened. You see, just like in other years, the US Mint wasn't perfect. Mistakes were made, errors that slipped past inspectors and ended up in circulation. And it's those errors, combined with rarity and pristine condition, that make a few 1976 pennies worth far more than anyone would expect. So, what exactly should you look for? First, there's the double die error, a collector favorite. This is when the coin's design is accidentally stamped twice during production, but slightly misaligned. The result? You'll see visible doubling on the letters or numbers, especially in words like liberty or in God we trust. Sometimes the date looks a little blurry or bold in a strange way. It's not damage, it's a minting mistake. And these mistakes are rare. There are also off-center strikes, where the coin wasn't properly aligned during production. This leads to a strange, uneven shape where part of the design is missing entirely. Some off-center errors are so dramatic, half the coin is blank, and collectors absolutely love these types of unique pieces. Another possibility? Struck on the wrong planchet. A planchet is the blank piece of metal that gets turned into a coin. In rare cases, pennies have been struck on dimes or even foreign coin blanks. These errors are incredibly scarce, and when they show up from a year like 1976, collectors go wild, but condition is key. Even a normal 1976 penny can be worth more than 1 cent if it's in perfect, untouched condition. Coin collectors use a grading scale that goes up to 70. A coin that's graded MS 65 or higher is in exceptional shape, no scratches, no dull spots, just beautiful coppery shine. Combine that kind of condition with a rare minting error, and you've got something truly special. Now, let's not forget about proof coins. Proof pennies from 1976, especially those minted in San Francisco with the S mark, were struck with extra care and precision for collectors. These coins often have a deep, mirror-like shine and frosted details. While many proofs were kept safe, only a small number remain in perfect condition today. Some of those, especially with rare varieties or errors, are incredibly valuable. So, how can you tell if you have a special 1976 penny? Start by checking the date. Look for any doubling, especially on the letters. Flip it over and check for off-center strikes or unusual shapes. If the coin feels too light or heavy, it could have been struck on the wrong planchet. And if the coin is in absolutely perfect condition, no scratches, no signs of wear, it could be a high-grade piece worth sending in for professional grading. The truth is, these valuable finds are out there. People have discovered them in old jars, in inherited collections, in bags of pennies from the bank, and yes, even in pocket change. Most 1976 Lincoln cents will be worth just face value. But a rare few, with the right combination of error, rarity, and condition, can be worth a small fortune. And one such coin? A 1976 Lincoln cent, struck with a stunning minting error and preserved in near-perfect condition, once sold for an amount that would shock most people. That single penny was sold for $46,000. Yes, you heard that right. $46,000. All for one little cent. So, don't underestimate your change. Dig through your old coin jars, ask your grandparents if they have any old collections tucked away, and keep your eyes open. Because that penny you almost didn't notice might be worth more than you ever imagined.